Her billionaire husband brought his mistress on stage, saying, "Accept her as my second wife." But the whole crowd laughed at him. After some time, 10 Rolls-Royces stopped at her gate. She whispered, "Now I will tell you who I am." This is a totally different story with different scenes and very powerful characters. Don't miss a powerful twist in Chapter 10, and don't forget to rate this story out of 10 after reading Hi, My Beautiful Family. May every woman in this world walk with pride, wrapped in dignity that no one can break. May her steps carry strength, her voice carry truth, and her heart carry a light so powerful that every home becomes warmer because of her. The chandelier's crystal shards caught the spotlight as Nicholas raised Charlize's hand to his lips, and Jennifer's champagne glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Not from shock, but from the sudden calculation blazing through her mind. 8 years. 8 years of playing the devoted wife, the understanding partner, the woman who'd shrunk herself to fit inside his ambitions, all of it disintegrating under the ballroom's golden light, while 600 guests watched her husband parade his mistress like a trophy he'd won. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nicholas's voice boomed through the microphone, smooth as the Italian leather shoes Jennifer had bought him last Christmas. "Tonight is about honesty, about living authentically." Jennifer set her glass down on the nearest table, her fingers steady despite the earthquake happening beneath her ribs. The emerald gown she wore, the one Nicholas had chosen, saying it matched her eyes, suddenly felt like a costume. She'd been playing a role in someone else's story, and the director had just yelled, "Cut!" The ballroom at the Grandview Hotel held the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers worth more than most people's homes cast golden light across marble floors. Ice sculptures depicting their 8-year marriage timeline melted slowly at each corner. A detail Jennifer had personally approved 3 weeks ago, back when she still believed her husband possessed shame. "My wife Jennifer," Nicholas continued, and she watched him gesture toward her without actually looking at her, "has been an adequate partner, but adequate isn't extraordinary, and I've built my life on refusing to settle for anything less than extraordinary. Adequate." The word landed like a slap, but Jennifer's face remained serene. Years of her father's training, never show weakness in public, never let them see you bleed, kicked in like muscle memory. She'd learned this at 14 when her mother died, and photographers swarmed their home like locusts. She'd perfected it at 17 when business rivals tried using her grief as leverage against her father. "Jennifer couldn't give me an heir," Nicholas said, his voice carrying that practiced sympathy that made her stomach turn. "She's been too focused on her charity work, too independent, too unwilling to prioritize our family's future. A man of my position needs a partner who understands sacrifice." The miscarriage. He was using the miscarriage. The baby she'd lost at 12 weeks. The child she'd mourned in silence while he was too busy to attend the hospital follow-up appointments. Jennifer's nails dug crescents into her palms, but her expression never wavered. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer caught whispers rippling through the room like wind through wheat. She recognized faces, business partners who'd signed deals at their dining table, society wives who'd gushed over her dinner parties, investors who'd praised her supportive nature while eyeing her husband's rising stock value. Charlize stepped closer to Nicholas, her red dress clinging to curves that Jennifer knew her husband had financed through personal training sessions he'd claimed were networking investments. The younger woman couldn't have been more than 26. Her smile was victorious, her hand possessive on Nicholas's arm, her diamond bracelet catching light. The same bracelet Jennifer had admired in a boutique window 6 months ago, the one Nicholas had said was too extravagant. "Which is why," Nicholas drew a breath, his chest puffing with misplaced pride, "I'm asking you all to witness and accept Charlize as my second wife. In many cultures, powerful men have understood that legacy requires multiple partnerships. I'm simply being honest about what I need to build my empire." The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the laughter started small. A chuckle from the back corner where the younger tech entrepreneurs had clustered, the ones who'd built their fortunes on disruption and had no patience for old money pretension. Then it spread like wildfire. Gaining volume and viciousness, Jennifer's eyes tracked the source. Damien Chen, a venture capitalist she'd introduced to Nicholas 3 years ago, was holding up his phone. The screen's glow illuminated his disgusted expression. "That's her." Damien's voice cut through Nicholas's speech like a blade. "The woman from those escort listings that were circulating last month. Someone sent me the screenshots as a joke. I thought it was fake." The ballroom erupted. Phones emerged from purses and pockets like weapons being drawn. The clicking of screenshots being taken sounded like a firing squad. Jennifer watched Charlize's face drain of color, watched Nicholas's confidence crumble into confusion, watched the carefully constructed evening implode. "That's insane," Nicholas sputtered, but his voice had lost its authority. The microphone picked up every tremor. "This is clearly a coordinated attack, someone trying to sabotage." "There are reviews, man," another voice called out from the investor section, "with dates, timestamps. While you two were definitely together, level hotels, the Meridian downtown, even the corporate apartments near your office. 5-star ratings for discretion and enthusiasm," someone else added, their tone dripping acid. "Really moving up in the world, Nicholas?" Jennifer stood perfectly still as chaos bloomed around her. She'd known about Charlize for 14 months, had watched Nicholas transform from the man who once surprised her with handwritten notes in Italian to a stranger who came home smelling like unfamiliar perfume and lies. But she'd waited, watched, documented every late meeting, every unexplained charge on credit cards he thought she didn't monitor, every business trip that had no corresponding company record. Her father had taught her patience. Wait until your enemy commits fully. Let them build their gallows before you hand them the rope. Nicholas was scrambling now, his hand raised for silence that wouldn't come. "Everyone, please, this is my anniversary, my moment of truth." "Your moment of humiliation," a woman's voice rang out. Jennifer recognized Vivian Cross, CEO of a pharmaceutical empire and someone who'd lost her own husband to a younger woman. "We're watching you destroy your marriage for an escort. That's not power, Nicholas, that's pathetic." The crowd's mood shifted from shocked amusement to something uglier, contempt. Jennifer could taste it in the air, thick and acrid. Nicholas had miscalculated catastrophically. He'd thought his success gave him immunity from judgment. He'd believed his wealth made him untouchable. He'd forgotten that society's elite stayed elite by maintaining appearances, and he'd just set those appearances on fire. Her father's business partner, Vincent Romano, materialized beside her like a ghost. He leaned close, his voice barely audible beneath the crowd's growing roar. "Your father's been tracking her for 6 months, Vincent murmured. Maxwell Technologies planted her at that conference in Singapore. They wanted Nicholas's algorithm codes, the facial recognition software worth 800 million. She's been photographed entering their headquarters 17 times. Wire transfers from their shell companies, the whole operation." Jennifer's breathing steadied. The pieces clicked into place with brutal clarity. Nicholas hadn't just betrayed her for passion. He'd been manipulated, used, played like a cheap instrument by competitors who'd identified his weakness, vanity and lust wrapped in midlife crisis paper, and he'd chosen this public humiliation, this spectacle, as the stage for his downfall. She moved then, not toward Nicholas, but toward the exit. Her heels clicked against marble with the rhythm of a countdown. The crowd parted instinctively, recognizing the shift in power even before understanding it. Conversations died in her wake. 600 people watched a woman walk away from her execution with the grace of a queen abdicating by choice. Nicholas finally looked at her, really looked at her, and something like panic flashed across his face. "Jennifer, wait. This isn't... We can discuss..." She stopped, turned. Let him see the woman he'd underestimated for 8 years. Let him see the daughter of Ricardo Castellano, the girl who'd been trained since birth to command rooms and destroy enemies. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the suddenly silent ballroom. I release you from our marriage, Nicholas. Consider yourself free to pursue whatever extraordinary future you believe you deserve. She pulled off her wedding ring, the 3-carat diamond he'd proposed with on a beach in Positano, back when his startup was worth nothing and his promises were everything. The metal had worn a groove into her finger. 8 years of wearing someone else's promise. It caught the light as she placed it deliberately on top of the champagne tower, the platinum band clinking against crystal. "The ring stays," she said, her words measured and final, "just like your dignity. May they both dissolve as beautifully as your reputation." Charlize made a small sound. Something between a gasp and a whimper. Nicholas reached toward Jennifer, but the distance between them might as well have been an ocean. The exit doors opened before she reached them. Her father's security team, always close but never visible, had been waiting. 4 men in impeccable suits formed a corridor. Jennifer walked through it into the night air, her spine straight, her head high, her heart splintering into pieces she'd reassemble later, in private, where Nicholas would never see. Behind her, the ballroom exploded with sound, accusations, denials, Charlize's voice rising in defensive shrieks, Nicholas trying to regain control of a room that no longer recognized his authority. The social equivalent of blood in the water, and the sharks were circling. But Jennifer was already pulling out her phone, already dialing the number she'd sworn she'd never call. The number that meant surrender. The number that meant returning to the world she'd abandoned for love. Her father answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting 8 years for this call. "I'm coming home," she said, her voice steady as stone. "Activate Protocol Raphael." There was a pause. Jennifer heard ice clinking in a glass, heard the leather creak of her father's office chair. Then Ricardo Castellano's response came through, heavy with satisfaction and sorrow. "Welcome back, daughter. Let me show you how empires bury their mistakes." Chapter 2. The woman he never knew. The penthouse smelled like another woman's perfume when Nicholas returned at dawn, but the scent that stopped him cold was unfamiliar. Jennifer's belongings were gone, and so was every trace that she'd ever softened his sharp edges. Nicholas stood in the doorway of what had been their bedroom for 5 years, his tuxedo wrinkled from the night he'd spent fielding calls from investors, lawyers, and one memorable threat from Damien Chen about removing funding from his Series C. Round his eyes, struggled to process the empty space before him. The bed remained, a California king with the Italian linens Jennifer had insisted on, the ones that cost more than his first car, but her side table was bare. No books stacked haphazardly with dog-eared pages marking her place in 3 novels simultaneously. No reading glasses with the tortoiseshell frames, no lavender sleep spray she used because she claimed it helped her mind quiet. No framed photo of them in Florence from their honeymoon, the one where they were both laughing, young and stupid with love, gelato melting down her wrist while he kissed her neck. The absence screamed louder than any argument they'd ever had. He moved through the apartment like a ghost haunting his own life. Each room revealed new voids. The living room's bookshelf, half of it dedicated to Jennifer's collection of poetry and Italian literature, stood empty on her side. The piano she'd played on Sunday mornings while he pretended to read the financial reports was closed, the sheet music gone. Even the throw pillows she'd bought over the years, the ones that had slowly transformed their minimalist space into something resembling a home, had vanished. The bathroom held none of her products, no French moisturizer she'd used every night, the one that made her skin smell like roses and cost $200 a jar. No jasmine perfume he'd bought her in Paris during their 2nd anniversary trip. No hair ties that used to litter every surface, no makeup scattered across the counter, no toothbrush in the holder beside his. It was as if she'd never existed here, as if 8 years had been erased in a single night. The closet destroyed him. His suits hung in neat rows on his side, untouched, but Jennifer's side gaped empty, hangers swaying slightly from the ventilation system, creating a rhythmic creaking that sounded like mockery. He remembered her clothes, the designer pieces she wore to events, the casual jeans and sweaters she preferred at home, the collection of vintage band t-shirts she'd owned since college all gone. But it was the kitchen that finally broke through his shock. The little yellow, sticky notes she used to leave, reminders, jokes, Italian phrases she was teaching him, were gone, all of them. He'd pulled half of them down over the years, dismissing them as clutter. Ti amo più della luna e tutte le stelle had been on the refrigerator last week. I love you more than the moon and all the stars. He'd barely glanced at it while grabbing his morning coffee. Now he'd trade everything to find just one. His phone buzzed. 17 missed calls from investors, 43 text messages, 6 voicemails from board members. The company group chat had exploded with 247 unread messages. He ignored them all and dialed Jennifer's number with shaking fingers. The automated voice was clinical. The number you have reached is no longer in service. Disconnected. She disconnected her number. Panic, real and primal, clawed up his throat. He called again, knowing it was futile. The same automated message. He tried her email. Delivery failure. Her social media accounts showed either deleted profiles or blocked access. He couldn't tell which. Her LinkedIn was gone. Even her professional translator website had been taken down. Jennifer Santos Whitmore had vanished from digital existence. Think, he muttered, pacing the empty living room. His reflection caught in the window, disheveled, tie loose, eyes bloodshot. Her office, her friends, someone knows where she went. But even as he said it, he realized the truth. Jennifer had no office. She'd worked from home, taking translation contracts remotely. Her friends, how many times had she asked him to attend dinners with them, and he'd been too busy? He couldn't remember a single name. She'd attended his events, met his contacts, networked for his benefit. He'd never reciprocated. His assistant Garrett arrived at 7, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. The man's usual composure had fractured into something resembling pity. He carried his briefcase like it held a bomb. I have information, Garrett said, setting his tablet on the counter with deliberate care. You need to sit down. I don't need to sit down. I need to find my wife. Ex-wife, technically. The divorce papers were filed at 6 a.m. this morning. Process server is scheduled for 10. Garrett pulled documents from his briefcase, but that's not the real problem, Mr. Whitmore. Nicholas grabbed the papers, scanning them frantically. The legal language blurred, but certain phrases jumped out: adultery, public humiliation, emotional cruelty, irreconcilable differences. Jennifer was claiming nothing, no alimony, no community property split, no settlement, just dissolution and restoration of her maiden name. This doesn't make sense, Nicholas said. His hands trembled, crinkling the pages. 8 years of marriage, and she wants nothing. The prenup entitled her to... She waived everything in the prenup that you forgot to read carefully, Garrett interrupted. But Mr. Whitmore, did you ever actually research your wife's background? Her full background? What the hell are you talking about? Jennifer worked as a translator when we met. Freelance. She came from money, but nothing excessive. Her father was in business, she said. Real estate or something. She never wanted to discuss it. Her maiden name is Castellano. The room tilted. Nicholas sat down after all, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. As in Ricardo Castellano, Garrett continued, his voice gentle like he was explaining terminal illness. He pulled up files on his tablet. Owner of Castellano Holdings, he controls 40% of this city's commercial real estate. Shopping centers, office towers, apartment complexes, warehouse districts. The building we're standing in right now, Castellano Holdings, Your office tower downtown? Castellano Holdings. The warehouse district where your servers are housed and your data center operates? Also Castellano Holdings? Nicholas's vision blurred at the edges. Blood roared in his ears. That's impossible. Jennifer never mentioned. She hid her identity completely. Used her mother's maiden name, Santos. For the first 2 years you knew her in Italy, and even after marriage, she kept it professionally. Never corrected anyone's assumptions about her background. Your prenup lists her as Jennifer Santos Whitmore. No mention of Castellano. Her bank accounts were under Santos. Everything was under Santos. The tablet screen showed a photo from 10 years ago. A teenage Jennifer standing beside a man who commanded space like gravity itself. Ricardo Castellano, Forbes-listed billionaire, philanthropist, and according to whispered rumors, a man who made problems and people disappear with equal efficiency. He was imposing in the photo, silver-haired, cold-eyed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Nicholas's first startup office. But it was Jennifer who shocked him. She was younger, maybe 17, wearing all black. A funeral. Her face held the same composure he'd seen last night, but her eyes were raw with grief. Her mother, Nicholas whispered, memory surfacing. Jennifer had told him once, early in their relationship, that her mother died when she was young. He'd never asked for details, never pushed when she changed the subject. Catalina Castellano died in a car accident, Garrett said softly. Jennifer was 17. She was in the car, survived with minor injuries while her mother died on impact. The press was brutal. Photographers camped outside their home, rumors about the father's business rivals being responsible. It destroyed her. Nicholas felt sick. Jennifer had carried that trauma, and he'd never known, never asked, never cared enough to dig deeper than the surface she'd presented. She was his only daughter, Garrett continued. His wife died when Jennifer was 17. Every article about Castellano mentions his obsessive privacy regarding his child. After the funeral, Jennifer disappeared from public life. I had to dig through Italian newspaper archives to find this photo. She moved to Europe, backpacked, used her mother's maiden name, met you. Nicholas remembered Jennifer's reluctance to talk about her family, how she'd changed the subject whenever he asked about her childhood, how she'd sometimes wake from nightmares and refuse to discuss them. He'd assumed normal family complications. He'd never imagined she was hiding an empire to test if he'd love her without it. There's more, Garrett said, and his tone made Nicholas's blood run cold. Your lease on this building expires in 30 days. Castellano Holdings sent notice this morning at 6:03 a.m. They're not renewing. They can't do that. We have a 5-year lease, which converted to month after the initial term ended last April. You never renegotiated because the building manager, who apparently reported directly to Mrs. Whitmore, told you it was automatically renewed at the same rate. It wasn't. She was subsidizing your rent. You've been paying 40% below market value for 3 years. Nicholas stood abruptly, knocking over the chair. It clattered against marble. My office building, same situation. 6-week notice. Expires December 20th. The warehouse lease was monthly from the start, terminates in 2 weeks. Garrett pulled up more documents, his fingers swiping through page after page of financial devastation. Mr. Whitmore, I've spent the last 4 hours reviewing your assets. Nearly everything you thought you owned is either leased from Castellano Holdings or financed through banks, where Castellano sits on the board. The apartment's walls seemed to close in. Nicholas stumbled to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city skyline. Dawn broke over glass towers and concrete canyons. How much of it belonged to the woman he'd humiliated last night? How much power had she wielded silently while he'd played king? The prenup, Nicholas said suddenly, memory surfacing. I remember now. Jennifer insisted on one, hired her own lawyer, said she wanted to make sure I married her, not her prospects. I thought it was sweet, naive. And you signed it without reading carefully because you assumed she had no prospects worth protecting. The prenup is a masterpiece of legal strategy. She waived all rights to your company, your patents, your intellectual property, anything you built. But properties titled in her name as gifts, and there are many, those remain hers. Nicholas's phone buzzed. His lawyer. He answered with numb fingers. "Nicholas, the prenup is airtight." Harrison's voice carried the exhaustion of an all-night document review. "Jennifer waived rights to your business assets, but properties she purchased and titled in her own name, even ones you thought were joint. The vacation home in Aspen, the yacht, the cars, the art collection, those are hers. You thought you were being generous, letting her handle real estate investments. She was creating an exit strategy." After Harrison hung up, Nicholas stood in his emptied home and finally understood Jennifer had loved him enough to hide her power, had trusted him enough to make herself vulnerable, had believed in him enough to let him build his ego on the foundation of her invisible support. She'd funded his dreams with her family's money while he'd thought he was self-made. She'd opened doors with her father's connections while he'd thought it was his charm. She'd protected him from business rivals who would have crushed his startup if they'd known who his wife was. And he'd repaid her by calling her adequate in front of 600 people. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered because he had nothing left to lose. "Mr. Whitmore." An unfamiliar voice, female, professional, merciless. "This is Castellano Holdings' legal department. We need to schedule a meeting regarding your immediate vacation of 3 properties, currently titled under Mrs. Jennifer Castellano's name, the penthouse apartment, the Aspen residence, and the parking garage where your vehicle collection is stored." "She goes by Whitmore," Nicholas said automatically, stupidly, "not according to any legal documents filed in the last 8 hours. Mrs. Castellano has reclaimed her family name. All accounts, properties, and legal identities have been restored to Castellano now. Regarding the properties, you have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings. After that, we'll handle disposal." The line went dead. Nicholas sank to the floor of his empty apartment, his back against the window. Surrounded by the ghost of a woman he'd never actually known, dawnlight flooded the space, revealing dust patterns where her furniture had stood. He realized with crystalline clarity that he hadn't lost a wife. He'd lost a queen who'd been playing peasant to make him feel like a king. And kingdoms, once abandoned, don't wait for fools to wise up. Chapter 3. Italy. 9 years ago. The Vespa's engine died on the hill overlooking Florence, and the girl with paint-stained fingers laughed so freely that Nicholas forgot he was supposed to be closing a deal worth millions. "This is what you get for renting the cheapest bike in Tuscany," she said, her accent carrying traces of somewhere expensive that she was trying to hide. She pushed wind-tangled hair from her face, leaving a smear of cobalt blue across her cheekbone. Nicholas had noticed her 3 days earlier at a cafe near the Duomo. She'd been sketching in a battered journal, drinking espresso, completely absorbed in whatever she was creating. He'd been there for a tech conference, pitching his facial recognition software to European investors who had more money than vision. The meetings had gone poorly. His product was too ambitious, they'd said. Too risky. Come back when you have proven revenue. He'd walked out of the final rejection and found her still at that cafe, now arguing with the waiter in fluid Italian about the difference between a macchiato and whatever bastardized version the tourist trap was serving. "You speak Italian," he'd said, sitting down without invitation. She'd looked up, dark eyes assessing him with unsettling accuracy. "You speak obvious. American? San Francisco, tech sector, recently humbled." He'd ordered 2 actual macchiatos. "You're American too. California, if I'm guessing right. But you've been here long enough to know which cafes are authentic." 6 months. She'd closed her journal before he could see the sketches. "I'm Jennifer. No last names, no personal history, no expectations. Those are my rules for travel friendships. Nicholas, and I can work with those rules." That had been 3 days ago. 3 days of wandering Florence like they were characters in someone else's story. She'd shown him hidden galleries tourists never found. He'd made her laugh by attempting Italian with his horrific American accent. They'd shared a bottle of wine sitting on the Ponte Vecchio at sunset, their legs dangling over the Arno, and she'd told him about losing her mother without saying how or when, just that grief had weight, and she was trying to walk far enough to leave it behind. Now the Vespa was dead, and they were stranded on a hill with vineyards stretching to the horizon. "We should call for help," Nicholas said, pulling out his phone. No signal. Of course. Jennifer laughed again, that unguarded sound that had captivated him from the start. "Or we could walk. There's a village 2 kilometers that way. We could have lunch, drink wine, pretend we're people who don't have real lives waiting to reclaim us." "What's your real life?" he asked, knowing she wouldn't answer. Complicated, controlled, suffocating. She started walking, her sundress catching the breeze. "What's yours?" "Broke, ambitious, probably foolish." He followed her down the dusty road. "I'm trying to build something that matters. Software that could change security, identification, missing persons recovery. But no one believes I can do it." "Do you believe you can do it?" "Yes." She stopped walking and turned to face him. The Tuscan sun caught the gold in her dark hair. "Then their belief is irrelevant. Build it anyway." The village was small, a church, a trattoria, maybe 15 homes. The owner of the restaurant recognized Jennifer immediately, greeting her like family. They spoke rapid Italian, while Nicholas tried to follow. Something about her staying at a villa nearby, painting the landscape, extending her trip indefinitely. They ate pasta made by the owner's wife, drank wine from the owner's brother's vineyard. Jennifer told him about backpacking through Europe after finishing graduate school, about using translation work to fund her wandering, about choosing freedom over the life her family had planned. "They wanted me to be someone specific," she said, twirling pasta on her fork. "Someone polished, someone who attended the right events and married the right person and never questioned what right meant. After my mother died, I couldn't breathe in that world anymore." "What did you do?" "Left. Changed my name legally to my mother's maiden name, bought a plane ticket. Told my father I'd come back when I figured out who I was, without his empire defining me." Nicholas wanted to ask about the empire, but remembered her rules. No personal history. "And have you? Figured out who you are?" Getting closer. She met his eyes across the table. "Who are you, Nicholas? Without your startup, without your ambitions, strip all that away." No one had ever asked him that. His entire identity was wrapped in what he was building, what he would become. Without it, he was just a kid from a middle-class suburb who'd gotten lucky with coding skills and unlucky with venture capital timing. "I don't know," he admitted. "Then maybe we're both searching for the same thing." They stayed in the village until evening. The owner insisted they take a room in his home, rather than risk the dead Vespa. 1 room, 1 bed. Neither of them pretended it was an accident. Nicholas kissed her as the sun set, her back against the ancient stone wall of the church. She tasted like wine and summer, and the kind of possibility he'd stopped believing in after 15 investor rejections. They made love slowly in a room that smelled like lavender, with shutters open to let in the night breeze. Afterward, she traced patterns on his chest in the darkness. "I could stay here forever," she whispered, "in this moment, this version of us." "Why can't you?" "Because moments end. Because real life finds you eventually. Because I'm afraid." "Of what?" She was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. "Then, that if you knew everything about me, where I come from, what I'm running from, you'd see me differently. You'd want me for the wrong reasons." Nicholas pulled her closer. "I don't even know your last name. I want you anyway." "That's the point. You want Jennifer the translator, Jennifer the artist, Jennifer the girl on a Vespa. You don't want the other version. Let me decide that. She kissed him instead of answering. They stayed in that village for 3 more days. The owner's son fixed the Vespa, but they didn't leave. They hiked through vineyards, made love in the afternoon heat, talked about building lives that meant something beyond wealth or status. She taught him Italian phrases. He told her about the facial recognition technology that would either make him a visionary or bankrupt him. "You'll succeed," she said, with certainty that startled him. "Not because you're the smartest or the most qualified, but because you're too stubborn to quit." "How do you know?" "Because you're still here. You could have gone home after the investors rejected you. Instead, you stayed in Italy, eating gelato and fixing Vespas with a strange woman that's not quitting." On the 4th day, her phone rang. She'd left it off until then. Nicholas watched her face change as she listened to whoever was on the other end. The free-spirited wanderer disappeared, replaced by someone harder, more controlled. "I have to go," she said after hanging up. "Family emergency." "Let me come with you." "No." She was already packing her small backpack. "This is the part where real life reclaims me." "Jennifer, wait." She kissed him hard enough to bruise. "Find me in 6 months. If we're supposed to happen, we'll find each other again." "That's insane. Give me your number, your email, something." She wrote an address on the back of a napkin, a post office box in San Francisco. "Write me letters, old-fashioned ones. If I write back, you'll know I want to be found." Then she was gone, climbing into a black car with tinted windows that had appeared from nowhere. Nicholas stood in the village square watching dust settle on the road, holding a napkin with an address and no last name. He wrote the first letter that night, mailed it the next morning from Florence before his flight home. She wrote back 3 weeks later. No return address, just her words on expensive stationery. "I'm not ready to be found yet, but I'm not ready to let you go either. Tell me about your impossible dream." They wrote letters for 4 months. He told her about moving back to San Francisco, about securing a small angel investment, about hiring his first employees. She told him about returning home, about confronting her father, about trying to build a life that honored both who she was and where she came from. Then she showed up at his office unannounced on a Tuesday in January. She was wearing a business suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, but her smile was the same one from the Vespa. "I figured out who I am," she said, "and I want to see if who I am works with who you are." He proposed 3 months later. She said yes, but insisted on a prenup. "I need to know you want me, not what I bring," she'd said. And he'd agreed because he thought he understood. He'd been a fool. She wasn't protecting her assets. She was protecting her heart. They married in a small ceremony in Napa. Her father attended, but didn't speak to Nicholas beyond necessary pleasantries. Jennifer wore her mother's dress. She cried during the vows. Nicholas promised her integrity, partnership, a life built on choice, not obligation. He'd kept that promise for maybe 3 years before ambition started whispering that he deserved more. That Jennifer's independence was neglect, that a man of his rising status needed a different kind of wife. Lying on the floor of his empty apartment, Nicholas finally understood what she'd been afraid of. She'd been right. The moment he knew about her family's power, everything would have changed. He would have changed. He'd proven it by destroying her the moment he no longer valued what they'd built together. She'd loved him enough to hide her empire and test if he could love her without it. He'd failed spectacularly. Chapter 4. The unraveling Charlize's face on Nicholas's phone screen wasn't smiling. It was calculating, and the background of her video call showed an office he'd never seen her enter. "We need to talk." Her voice had lost the breathy quality she'd used for 14 months. Now she sounded businesslike, professional, nothing like the adoring woman who'd whispered that she couldn't live without him. Nicholas sat in his temporary office, a WeWork space he'd rented after being evicted from the Castellano building. 2 weeks since Jennifer had walked out of his life. 2 weeks of watching his company hemorrhage resources and credibility. "Where are you?" he demanded. "You disappeared. Investors are asking questions. The media is destroying us." "Media is destroying you," Charlize corrected. "I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine." The camera angle shifted. Nicholas saw modern furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the financial district. Then another person stepped into frame. Maxwell Chen, CEO of Maxwell Technologies, Nicholas's biggest competitor. Nicholas's blood turned to ice. "Hello, Whitmore." Maxwell's smile was shark-like. "Thanks for the facial recognition algorithm. Took us 18 months to extract it. But Charlize here is very talented at her job." "What the hell is this?" Charlize's laugh was nothing like the soft giggle she'd used when he'd bought her jewelry. "This is business. You really thought a woman like me would fall for a man like you? You're not that charming." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The way Charlize had pursued him at that Singapore tech conference 18 months ago. How she'd known exactly what to say, what to wear, how to stroke his ego. The questions she'd asked about his work that had seemed like genuine interest. The times he'd fallen asleep after sex and woken to find her scrolling through his laptop, which she'd claimed was just checking her email. "You stole my code," Nicholas said, his voice flat. "Borrowed," Maxwell corrected, "and improved. Our version launches next month. Full facial recognition with emotional analysis capability. We'll corner the security market before your inferior product ever goes public." Nicholas's CFO had warned him 3 weeks ago. Money missing from accounts, transfers to shell companies. He'd been too distracted by the affair, too caught up in planning his humiliation of Jennifer to investigate properly. "The transfers," Nicholas said. "The missing funds." "Consulting fees," Charlize said brightly, "for services rendered. Maxwell Technologies paid me very well to get close to you. The sex was tedious, but the commission made it worthwhile." "You can't do this. I'll sue. You'll do nothing," Maxwell interrupted, "because if you go public with this, everyone will know you gave your mistress access to proprietary technology. Your investors will sue you for negligence. Your board will remove you. Your company will be worthless. But if you stay quiet, we might let you keep the scraps." The call ended. Nicholas sat in the WeWork space, surrounded by startups full of hungry young entrepreneurs who reminded him of who he used to be. His phone buzzed with notifications. His CFO, his lawyer, board members demanding emergency meetings. He opened his laptop and started reviewing financial records. The theft was sophisticated. Charlize had used his credentials to access secure files. She'd copied algorithm code during the month she'd been staying at his apartment. The wire transfers had been disguised as legitimate consulting payments, filtered through 3 shell companies before reaching accounts in her name. His lawyer called within the hour. "It's bad," Harrison said without preamble. "Charlize worked for Maxwell Technologies the entire time. We found her employment records. She's been on their payroll for 2 years. The affair was a corporate espionage operation. Can we prove it? Probably. But proving it means admitting you gave your mistress access to company secrets. Your board will destroy you. Investors will pull out. You'll be radioactive in the tech industry." Nicholas closed his eyes. "What are my options? Take the loss rebuild. Hope Maxwell's version has enough differences that we can claim independent development. Or go to war and risk losing everything." After Harrison hung up, Nicholas pulled up security footage from his office building there, Charlize entering after hours, using the keycard he'd stupidly given her. Meeting with someone in the parking garage, a man whose face Nicholas now recognized from LinkedIn, James Park, Maxwell Technologies' chief engineer. His email pinged, a message from an unknown sender with a video attachment. He opened it despite knowing he shouldn't. The video showed Charlize at a restaurant with Maxwell and 2 others. The audio was clear. "Is he actually going to announce me as his second wife?" Charlize was laughing. That's perfect. The public humiliation will destroy his credibility. No one takes a man seriously after that kind of disaster. You've done well, Maxwell said. The algorithm code alone was worth 5 million, but destroying his marriage to Ricardo Castellano's daughter, that's priceless. Castellano will crush him now. We won't have to. Charlize raised her wine glass. To the easiest money I've ever made. All I had to do was endure mediocre sex and listen to him complain about his wife. The video ended. Nicholas vomited in the WeWork bathroom. Then he sat on the floor and finally understood the magnitude of his stupidity. Jennifer had known. That's why she'd never fought back, never caused scenes, never begged him to stay. She'd been waiting for him to realize the trap he'd walked into. She'd probably known about Charlize's real employers before he'd even brought her to their anniversary party. His business partner Derek called. Board meeting tomorrow. They're voting on your removal as CEO. I tried to fight it, but after the news about Maxwell Technologies launching a competing product, they're using my code. Prove it, because right now, you just look like a man who destroyed his marriage, humiliated his wife, and lost his company's competitive advantage in the same night investors want you gone. Nicholas spent the night reviewing everything, the contracts, the transfers, the timeline of his relationship with Charlize. Every piece of evidence confirmed what he already knew. He'd been played, manipulated, used. But worse than being used was knowing he'd destroyed Jennifer for it. He'd humiliated her publicly for a woman who'd never cared about him. He'd thrown away 8 years of marriage, the only real relationship he'd ever had, for corporate espionage wrapped in a red dress. His phone buzzed at 3 a.m. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Maxwell Technologies acquisition announcement tomorrow. Castellano Ventures purchased them for $2.1 billion. All assets, all patents, all personnel, effective immediately. V. Romano. Nicholas stared at the message. Vincent Romano, Jennifer's father's business partner, the man who'd stood beside her at the anniversary gala. He pulled up the news. Breaking story. Castellano Ventures completes hostile takeover of Maxwell Technologies, all executives to be replaced. Complete corporate restructuring planned. Jennifer had just bought the company that had tried to destroy him. She now owned his stolen code, owned Charlize's employers, owned the entire operation that had targeted him. But the message from Romano had one more line he'd missed. Mrs. Castellano says you have 48 hours to vacate her properties. Everything you own is headed for foreclosure. She's calling in every loan, every lease, every debt. Good luck. Nicholas understood then. Jennifer wasn't just walking away. She was systematically dismantling everyone who had hurt her, including the mistress's employers and the husband who'd betrayed her. He was watching an empire burn his life to ashes. Chapter 5. 3 months later, her resurrection. 10 Rolls-Royces don't arrive quietly. They arrive like thunder, and every neighbor's curtain twitched as Jennifer stepped out wearing her mother's emerald necklace and the smile of a woman who'd stopped playing small. The Castellano estate sprawled across 15 acres in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Jennifer hadn't been here since her wedding day 8 years ago, when she'd walked out of these gates toward a life she'd thought would be built on love. Now she was walking back in, reclaiming the empire she'd abandoned for a man who'd proven unworthy of the sacrifice. 800 guests filled the mansion's ballroom and gardens. Every major player in tech, finance, real estate, and politics had received an invitation. Refusing would have been professional suicide. Attending meant acknowledging the shift in power. Jennifer Castellano was back, and she was done being invisible. Nicholas learned about the event from a LinkedIn notification. The entire tech industry was discussing it, Castellano Ventures' first major gala since Ricardo's daughter had returned to the company. Speculation ran wild about her plans, her role, her intentions. He arrived uninvited, desperate. Charlize was with him, clinging to his arm with desperation that mirrored his own. She'd been fired by Maxwell Technologies during the acquisition, blacklisted from the industry, facing lawsuits for breach of contract. They'd found each other in their mutual destruction, two people drowning who'd grabbed the same piece of wreckage. The security at the estate gates was military grade. 6 guards in black suits stopped them immediately. Names? Nicholas Whitmore. I need to speak with Jennifer. Not on the list, leave. She's my wife. Mrs. Castellano is divorced. You have no relationship to this family. Leave or we'll remove you. Charlize tried her desperate charm. Please, we just need 5 minutes. Tell her, Charlize. The guard's expression turned cold. We know exactly who you are, Miss Dawson. Mrs. Castellano specifically instructed that you both be removed from the premises on sight. Nicholas tried to push past the guards, moved with professional efficiency, restraining him without causing a scene. Through the estate's gates, he could see the glow of the party, lights, music, laughter. Jennifer's world, the one she'd left behind for him. Let me see her. His voice cracked. Jennifer! Jennifer! A figure appeared from the shadows. Vincent Romano, impeccable in a tuxedo, holding a champagne flute like a weapon. She can't hear you, Vincent said calmly, and even if she could, she wouldn't care. You're yesterday's mistake, Whitmore. She's done cleaning up messes. I need to explain. Explain what? That you were stupid? She knows. That you're sorry? Too late. That you've lost everything? She engineered it. Vincent's smile was blade thin. You humiliated Ricardo Castellano's daughter in front of 600 people. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? I love her. You loved what she could do for you. The rest was convenient. Vincent nodded to the guards. Remove them. If they return, call the police. Inside the ballroom, Jennifer stood on the stage, where a string quartet had been playing. The music stopped. 800 faces turned toward her. She wore a black gown that had belonged to her mother, diamonds that had been her grandmother's, and confidence that belonged entirely to herself. Thank you all for coming. Her voice carried effortlessly, amplified by speakers. Tonight we celebrate not just Castellano Ventures' success, but a return to values that matter: integrity, loyalty, the understanding that power without principle is just tyranny with better PR. The crowd applauded. Jennifer's father stood at the edge of the stage, his pride evident. Tonight I'm announcing Castellano Ventures' acquisition of Maxwell Technologies for $2.1 billion. We've restructured their leadership, their ethics, their entire operation. What was a company built on theft and espionage is now being transformed into something worthy of our name. More applause. Nicholas, being dragged toward the gate, could hear every word through speakers positioned throughout the grounds. We're also launching the Catalina Castellano Foundation, Jennifer continued. Named for my mother, it will fund education for women in tech, scholarships for survivors of domestic violence, and support for anyone rebuilding their life after betrayal. The crowd erupted. Jennifer smiled, and Nicholas saw in that expression everything he'd lost. She wasn't just successful, she was transcendent. This was who she'd always been, the woman she'd hidden to make him feel larger than he was. At the gate, a black-suited assistant appeared with an envelope. Mrs. Castellano asked me to deliver this, she said, handing it to Nicholas. She said you have 48 hours. The envelope contained foreclosure notices. The WeWork space he'd been renting, owned by Castellano Holdings, his car, financed through a Castellano-backed bank. His few remaining assets, all connected to companies where Jennifer's father held influence. Charlize read over his shoulder and went pale. She's taking everything. She already took everything, Nicholas said numbly. We just didn't notice until now. They were escorted off the property as the party continued inside. Through the gates, Nicholas caught one final glimpse of Jennifer. She was laughing with a tech CEO he recognized, her hand gesturing expressively, surrounded by people who valued her mind and her power. She never looked toward the gate. never acknowledged his presence or his absence. He was already erased from her story. 2 security guards deposited them on the street outside the estate. Nicholas and Charlize stood there as the 10 Rolls-Royces drivers waited patiently, as valets parked Bentleys and Maseratis. As the elite celebrated inside the world Nicholas had thought he belonged to. "What do we do now?" Charlize asked, mascara running from tears she should have cried when she decided to betray him. Nicholas pulled out the foreclosure notices. In Jennifer's handwriting, there was one additional line he'd almost missed. "You wanted extraordinary. Try rebuilding from nothing like I had to. Maybe you'll learn what actually matters." "We survive," Nicholas said finally. "If we can." Chapter 6. The First Apology. Nicholas's reflection in the motel bathroom mirror showed a man he didn't recognize, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing yesterday's shirt, and for the first time in his life he understood what his wife had meant by, "Love isn't ownership." The Starlight Motel sat on the edge of the industrial district, where the city's gleam faded into warehouses and auto repair shops. $60 a night, cash only, no questions asked. The neon sign outside flickered erratically, casting red shadows across walls that hadn't seen fresh paint in a decade. This was Nicholas's new reality. 6 weeks since the gala. 6 weeks since Jennifer had systematically dismantled his life with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. The company had voted him out. His board seat went to someone Jennifer's father recommended. His remaining shares were diluted to worthlessness during an emergency funding round that saved the company but erased his stake. Charlize had disappeared 3 weeks ago. He'd woken one morning to find her gone, along with the last $200 he'd hidden in his wallet. No note, no explanation, just absence where desperation had briefly lived. Nicholas wrote his 47th letter to Jennifer on motel stationery that smelled like cigarettes and failure. His handwriting had deteriorated from executive precision to something approaching desperation. "Jennifer, I know you won't read this. The others came back unopened, your assistant's stamp marking them return to sender. But I keep writing because I don't know what else to do. I destroyed the only real thing in my manufactured life. I called you adequate when you were extraordinary. I humiliated you for a woman who was paid to destroy me. There are no words that make this better. There's no apology that earns forgiveness. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I had. I see what I threw away. I see who you were and who I failed to be. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. I'm devastated doesn't touch it. I would give anything, everything, to go back to that village in Italy and be the man you believed I could become, but I can't. So I'm trying to become him now, even though it's too late, even though you'll never see it, because you deserved better then, and you deserve better now, Nicholas." He sealed the envelope, knowing it would join the others, rejected and unread. He mailed it anyway from the post office on 3rd Street, standing in line behind people paying bills, buying stamps, living ordinary lives that had never imploded. His phone had been disconnected 2 weeks ago. The laptop sold to pay for another week at the motel. He'd kept one thing, his mother's watch, which he couldn't bring himself to pawn despite the $300 it would bring. The charity auction at the Grandview Hotel was invitation only, but Nicholas had learned the service entrance codes from a busboy he'd befriended at a soup kitchen. He wasn't above sneaking in. He'd lost pride somewhere between the penthouse and the motel. The ballroom glittered exactly like it had at their anniversary. Different event, same wealth, same people who'd watched his humiliation and probably still joked about it over martinis. Nicholas kept to the shadows, avoiding recognition, scanning faces for the only one that mattered. Jennifer appeared at 9 o'clock, wearing midnight blue silk that made her look like expensive darkness. Her hair was different, shorter, more severe, nothing like the soft waves she'd worn during their marriage. She moved through the crowd with authority he'd never truly appreciated, stopping to speak with donors, her smile professional but warm. She was 20 feet away when someone recognized Nicholas. "Is that Whitmore?" The whisper carried like poison. What's he doing here? Security materialized instantly. 2 guards, professional and courteous, but firm. Sir, your name isn't on the guest list. I need to speak with Jennifer Castellano. Mrs. Castellano isn't available. Please leave voluntarily, or we'll escort you out. Jennifer's head turned at the commotion. Her eyes met his across the ballroom, and Nicholas watched her expression cycle through recognition, dismissal, and something that might have been pity before settling on absolute indifference. She turned back to her conversation as if he'd never existed. Jennifer! His voice cracked. People stared. He didn't care anymore. Please! 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. The security guards gripped his arms. Jennifer said something to the woman she'd been speaking with and walked toward them. Hope flared in Nicholas's chest until he saw her face up close. There was no warmth there, no recognition of what they'd been, just the cool assessment of someone dealing with an inconvenience. Let him go, she told security. Then to Nicholas. Outside, you have 3 minutes. The terrace overlooked the hotel gardens, empty except for them, and a guard stationed discreetly at the entrance. The October air bit through Nicholas's worn jacket. Jennifer stood with her arms crossed, waiting. I'm sorry, Nicholas started. The words felt pathetically inadequate. I know that's not enough. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know that I understand now. What I had, what you sacrificed, what I threw away. Are you finished? Her voice was ice. No emotion, no anger, nothing. That hurt worse than hatred would have. Jennifer, please, I was an idiot. I was manipulated, yes, but that's not an excuse. I made choices, bad choices. I hurt you in ways that can't be undone. But the man you met in Italy, the man you believed in, he's still here. I'm trying to find him again. That man never existed, Jennifer said quietly. He was a fantasy I created because I wanted to believe love could be simple, that I could escape my family's world and build something real. But you proved my mother right. Powerful men don't marry for love. They marry for what love can give them. That's not true. Don't. Her voice sharpened. Don't lie to yourself or to me. You loved what I did for you. The doors I opened with my father's connections. The money I invested in your company through shell accounts. You never questioned the social capital I brought. You loved having a wife who was smart enough to be interesting, but invisible enough not to threaten your ego. I loved you. He stepped closer. She stepped back. You loved the idea of me, the translator who chose you, the woman who made you feel like you'd won something precious. But you never loved Jennifer Castellano. You never even tried to know her. Then let me try now. Let me learn who you are. Give me a chance to what, Nicholas? Her composure cracked slightly, showing the anger beneath. To grovel until I take you back? To rebuild your life using my resources while pretending it's love? You don't want me. You want what I represent. The same thing you wanted when you destroyed our marriage for a woman you thought was an upgrade. The words hit like physical blows. Nicholas felt tears burning behind his eyes, but refused to let them fall. You're wrong. I want you, the woman who left sticky notes in Italian, who played piano on Sunday mornings, who believed in my dreams when no one else did. I want to spend the rest of my life proving I can be worthy of that woman. Jennifer laughed, but there was no humor in it. You didn't break my heart, Nicholas. You revealed you never understood what it held. My sticky notes weren't cute quirks. They were me trying to keep our marriage alive when you were already shopping for replacements. My piano playing wasn't background music. It was me mourning the man I'd married who was disappearing into someone I didn't recognize. She pulled her phone from her clutch, glanced at the screen. Your 3 minutes are up. Jennifer, please, do you know what the worst part was? She looked at him fully for the first time. It wasn't the affair. It wasn't the public humiliation. It was realizing that I'd spent 8 years making myself smaller so you could feel bigger. I hid my intelligence because it made you uncomfortable. I downplayed my family's success because it threatened yours. I pretended your startup was a miracle instead of acknowledging the $500,000 I'd invested through a venture capital firm my father controlled. I erased myself to build you up, and you still found me inadequate. Nicholas's legs felt weak. You invested in my company? Series A, funding through Romano Ventures. You never checked the board composition carefully enough to see my father's name buried in the LLC structure. We kept you afloat during 3 quarters, where you should have folded. I believed in your vision. Just not enough to let you know the believer was me. The revelation staggered him. Everything he'd built, every success he'd claimed as self-made genius, had been financed by the woman he'd called a failure. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to love me, not what I could give you. I tested whether you'd choose me when you thought I was ordinary. You failed that test the moment you decided ordinary wasn't enough. She turned toward the door. Goodbye, Nicholas. Please don't contact me again. I'm not giving up on us. She paused, her hand on the door handle. There is no us. There's me, rebuilding the life I should never have left. And there's you, facing consequences you spent 8 years earning. I hope you learn something from them, but I won't be here to see it. The door closed behind her. The security guard stepped forward. Time to go, sir. Nicholas walked through the hotel in a daze, past the glittering ballroom where Jennifer had returned to her world. Past the lobby where valets brought luxury cars for people who'd never known what it felt like to lose everything, out into the street where the city's indifference felt like drowning. He walked for hours, through neighborhoods that transformed from affluent to struggling, past closed shops and open bars, past people living lives untouched by his drama. He ended up at the waterfront, staring at dark water that reflected city lights like broken glass. A homeless veteran sat on a bench nearby, wrapped in a blanket that had seen better decades. The man looked up as Nicholas approached. You look like someone who just lost a war with himself, the veteran said. Something like that. Yeah, I know that face. Wore it myself after I came home. Everything gone. Everyone moved on. Suddenly you're a ghost in your own life. Nicholas sat down on the bench. How did you survive it? 1 day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. You stop expecting the world to give you back what you lost. Start figuring out what you can build with what's left. The veteran studied him. You that tech guy who crashed and burned, aren't you? Saw it on the news. The wife, the mistress, the whole disaster. That's me. Karma doesn't miss an address, brother. But here's the thing. Karma doesn't care if you learn from it. That's on you. You can drown in what you did wrong, or you can figure out how to be different going forward. Most people drown. The veteran stood, folding his blanket with military precision. There's a shelter on 7th. Good people running it. They help folks get back on their feet. You look like you could use the help. He walked away, leaving Nicholas alone with the water and the weight of everything he'd destroyed. The shelter on 7th Street served breakfast starting at 6 a.m. Nicholas showed up at 5:45 the next morning. Chapter 7. The Long Road Back. The soup kitchen's fluorescent lights buzzed like his failures, but Nicholas kept chopping onions because this was the first thing in 6 months that made him feel remotely human. His hands had changed. 6 months of construction work had calloused them, scarred them, transformed them from executive softness into something capable of actual labor. He'd started at the shelter on 7th, as the veteran had suggested, sleeping in a bunk bed with 40 other men, eating donated food, attending mandatory job counseling. The counselor had been blunt. Your reputation is destroyed in tech. No one will hire you. Your choices are manual labor, service industry, or leave the city entirely. Nicholas had chosen to stay. Leaving felt like admitting defeat, and he'd already surrendered enough. He'd found work with a construction crew rebuilding affordable housing downtown. The foreman, a man named Hector, who'd served time for robbery in his 20s, didn't care about Nicholas's past. You show up on time, work hard, keep your mouth shut. You got a place here, Hector had said. I don't care if you used to be a CEO or a janitor. On my crew, everyone bleeds the same when they nail their thumb. The work was brutal. 10-hour days hauling materials, operating equipment, learning skills he'd never imagined needing. His body hurt constantly. Muscles he'd forgotten existed, screaming their existence. But the physical pain was cleaner than the mental anguish. Simpler, more honest. He'd moved from the shelter to a studio apartment in a building where his neighbors were single mothers, elderly couples on fixed incomes, immigrants working 3 jobs, people who knew real struggle. His apartment had 600 square feet, a window that looked at a brick wall, and rent he could barely afford. It felt like a palace compared to the motel. Therapy had been Hector's suggestion. You got demons, man. I can see them. They'll eat you alive if you don't face them. Dr. Patricia Williams worked from a community health clinic, seeing patients on a sliding scale. Nicholas paid $20 per session, which was all he could afford. She was in her 60s, unimpressed by his former status, and ruthlessly honest. You're here because you lost everything or because you want to change? She'd asked in their first session. Both. Wrong answer. You're here because losing everything forced you to see yourself clearly for the first time. That's not the same as wanting to change. That's wanting to stop hurting. She'd been right. The first months of therapy had been excruciating, confronting his arrogance, his entitlement, the way he'd used Jennifer without recognizing he was doing it. Dr. Williams didn't let him hide behind justifications or self-pity. You betrayed someone who loved you. Own it. Stop explaining it. Own it. Now, 6 months later, Nicholas chopped onions at St. Catherine's soup kitchen 3 evenings a week. It was volunteer work, unpaid, done, because the veteran had been right about needing to build something with what remained. You're getting better at that, Maria, the kitchen manager said. She was in her 70s, ran the kitchen with military efficiency, and took no nonsense from anyone, almost like you've done real work before. Learning as I go. Aren't we all? She dumped carrots into his cutting board pile. You still trying to win back that wife of yours? Everyone at the kitchen knew his story. Hard to hide, when you'd been national news for weeks, Maria had heard it all and responded with characteristic bluntness. You screwed up spectacular. Now you got to live with it. I'm not trying to win her back anymore, Nicholas said, which was mostly true. I'm trying to become someone who deserved her in the first place. That's growth. Maria nodded approvingly. Most men would still be making excuses. During his lunch break from construction work, Nicholas had started going to the public library. He'd discovered Jennifer's name on a donor plaque for the building's renovation. That had led to research, searching her name in old articles, charity registrations, tax documents. What he'd found had gutted him. Jennifer had been volunteering at women's shelters throughout their marriage. Every Tuesday evening, when she'd said she had book club, she'd been at Harbour House, reading to children whose mothers were escaping domestic violence. The scholarship program she'd mentioned once in passing, 200 students funded annually in her mother's name. The translation services she'd provided free to immigrant families navigating legal systems. She'd built an empire of quiet generosity while he'd been networking at cocktail parties and complaining about her wasting time on charity theatre. She was always more than you saw, Dr. Williams had said when he'd shared this discovery. People usually are. You just chose not to look. The library's computer gave him access to Castellano Ventures' website. Jennifer's official bio was brief. Jennifer Castellano serves as Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. She holds degrees in linguistics and international business from Stanford and Milan's Bocconi University. Her focus areas include ethical technology investment and social impact ventures. Bocconi University. She'd never mentioned studying in Milan. He'd assumed her year in Italy had been wandering. She'd been earning a graduate degree. Every discovery was another knife twist. Everything he'd dismissed as cute or trivial had been substance he'd failed to recognize. Nicholas wrote his final letter to Jennifer on a Saturday morning, not begging anymore, just acknowledging. Jennifer, this is the last letter I'll write. You asked me not to contact you, and I'm finally respecting that I'm not writing to ask for anything. I'm writing to say what I should have said 8 years ago. You were enough. You were always more than enough. I was the one who was inadequate, not you. I'm working construction now, living in a studio on the East Side, volunteering at a soup kitchen where your mother's foundation provides funding. I saw the plaque, learning about all the things you did that I never appreciated. The shelter work, the scholarships, the translation services. The woman I married was extraordinary, and I was too self-absorbed to see it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that destroying our marriage taught me more about love than building it ever did. I hope you're happy. I hope whoever you end up with sees you clearly, really sees you, the way I should have from the start. Goodbye, Jennifer. Thank you for trying to love me. I'm sorry I made it so hard. Nicholas. He didn't mail this one. He kept it folded in his wallet as a reminder of what he'd learned and what he'd lost. His construction crew was renovating a building 3 blocks from Castellano Ventures headquarters. Sometimes during lunch, Nicholas would see Jennifer's car, the Tesla she'd bought herself, not the Mercedes he'd thought was appropriate for his wife. Pulling into the parking structure he never approached, never tried to catch her attention, just watched from a distance, seeing her move through the world she'd reclaimed. You still hung up on her, Hector observed one afternoon, following Nicholas's gaze. Always will be. That's not something you get over. Then what's the point of all this? Hector gestured at their work. The therapy, the volunteering, the humble pie you're eating every day. If you don't get her back, what's it for? It's for becoming someone who would have deserved her, even if that person comes too late. Hector considered this. That's either really profound or really stupid. Haven't decided which. The 8th month brought an unexpected visitor. Nicholas was leaving the soup kitchen after evening shift when a black Mercedes pulled up. The back window lowered, revealing Ricardo Castellano's weathered face. Get in, Whitmore. It wasn't a request. Nicholas climbed into the back seat, suddenly aware of his work clothes, his calloused hands, the smell of onions and sweat that clung to him. Ricardo studied him with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. The car didn't move. My daughter still loves you. That's the only reason you're breathing. Don't make me regret my mercy. Nicholas found his voice. I don't want mercy. I want to earn back what I destroyed. You can't. What you destroyed doesn't exist anymore. She's not the woman who hid her identity to test your love. She's not the woman who made herself small for your comfort. You broke that version of her. I know. Do you? Ricardo leaned forward. Because from where I sit, you're still playing the same game. Living rough, working hard, performing redemption, all of it designed to prove something to her, to manipulate her sympathy, to engineer a second chance you haven't earned. The accusations stung because part of it was true. Nicholas had hoped his suffering would mean something to Jennifer, that his transformation would matter. I'm not trying to manipulate her. I'm trying to change. Why? What's the point if she's never coming back? Nicholas looked out the window at the soup kitchen's lit windows, at the people filing in for dinner, the homeless, the working poor, the forgotten, people he'd never have noticed in his previous life. Because she was right about me, I was a user, a taker, someone who measured people by what they could give me. I don't want to be that anymore, even if she never sees it, even if nobody sees it. Ricardo was silent for a long moment. Then, my daughter is getting remarried in 3 months. Castellano tradition. The father chooses the groom. I chose someone worthy. A senator's son. Good family, good values. Someone who sees her clearly. The words landed like a physical blow. Nicholas felt the air leave his lungs. She said yes? She said she'd consider it, which from Jennifer means yes. She's done waiting for you to become what you should have been from the start. The car door opened. Controlled by Ricardo's driver, Nicholas was being dismissed. Go home, Whitmore. Move on. She has. Nicholas stood on the sidewalk, watching the Mercedes disappear into traffic. The engagement information felt like dying. But beneath the pain was something else, a strange, hollow acceptance. Jennifer deserved to be happy. If that happiness didn't include him, then he'd lived long enough with his failures to know he had no right to interfere. He walked home through evening streets, past the construction site where he'd spend tomorrow hauling lumber, past the library where he'd learned who Jennifer really was, past the life he'd once had and would never have again. The letter in his wallet crinkled as he climbed the stairs to his studio. He pulled it out, read it one final time, then burned it in the kitchen sink. No more letters, no more apologies, no more hoping, just the long road back to becoming someone he could live with. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Ricardo Castellano's office overlooked the city like a chessboard, and Nicholas finally understood he'd never been a player. He'd been a piece Jennifer had protected until he insisted on sacrificing himself. The summons had come through Hector. A lawyer had appeared at the construction site requesting Nicholas's presence at Castellano Ventures headquarters mandatory, immediate, non-negotiable. Nicholas had cleaned up in the site's bathroom, washing construction dust from his face and arms, changing into the one clean shirt he kept in his locker. It wasn't enough. He still looked like what he was, a man who'd fallen far and hadn't climbed back up. The Castellano building was 43 stories of glass and steel dominance. Nicholas had been here once before, 8 years ago, when Jennifer's father had coldly congratulated them on their wedding and offered to set Nicholas up with a real job Nicholas had refused with the arrogance of a man who thought he'd already made it. Security escorted him to the top floor. Ricardo's office occupied an entire corner, windows on two sides revealing the city sprawling beneath them like an empire waiting to be conquered. The man himself sat behind a desk that had probably cost more than Nicholas's entire studio apartment building. Sit. Ricardo didn't look up from the document he was reviewing. I have a meeting in 20 minutes, so let's make this efficient. Nicholas sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. The furniture alone was worth more than his current net worth. Ricardo set down the document and met Nicholas's eyes with the cold assessment of a man who'd built empires and buried enemies. He slid a cashier's check across the desk, $100,000, made out to Nicholas Whitmore. Take it. Leave the city. Never contact my daughter again. Nicholas stared at the check. $100,000 would change everything. Could restart his life in another city, another industry, another chance. Could erase the studio apartment and construction work and soup kitchen volunteering, could let him forget. He left the check on the desk, untouched. I'm not taking your money. Don't be stupid. This is more generosity than you deserve. Take it and disappear before I lose patience. No. Ricardo's expression hardened. You think refusing makes you noble? It makes you a fool. Jennifer is moving on. She's getting married to someone who deserves her. Your suffering serves no purpose except your own ego. Then it serves no purpose. Nicholas said quietly, I'm not leaving because I'm not trying to manipulate her anymore. I'm staying because this is where I need to be. Where I'm learning to be better. Better for what? For whom? She doesn't want you. I know. This isn't for her. It's for me. Nicholas leaned forward. Mr. Castellano, I destroyed your daughter. I know that. I called her inadequate when she was extraordinary. I humiliated her publicly for a woman who was paid to destroy me. There's no apology big enough, no gesture grand enough. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking that you let me rebuild myself in the same city where I tore myself down. Why? Why does it matter where you rebuild? Nicholas thought about the soup kitchen, the construction site, the library where he'd learned about Jennifer's real life, the therapy sessions with Dr. Williams. the studio apartment where he slept on a mattress on the floor. The city itself had become his punishment and his classroom, because running away would be easy. Staying is the work. Ricardo studied him with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades reading people for weakness and deception. Finally, he spoke. Jennifer used to leave you notes, little yellow sticky notes everywhere. She'd write them in Italian, phrases, jokes, reminders. Do you remember what they said? The question caught Nicholas off guard. Some of them, not all. She told me once that you never responded to them, never wrote her one back, never acknowledged the effort she put into communicating with you in ways that mattered to her. Ricardo's voice carried an edge. Do you know why she stopped leaving them? I pulled them down, called them clutter. Wrong. She stopped when she realized you weren't reading them anymore. The ones you pulled down, you'd crumpled without looking. She found them in the trash. That's when she knew you'd stopped seeing her. The revelation hit like a punch. Nicholas remembered the sticky notes, remembered tossing some aside when they interfered with his morning routine. He'd never realized Jennifer was watching, measuring his indifference, cataloguing his neglect. I was a fool. You were worse than a fool. You were cruel without even noticing. Ricardo stood, walking to the windows overlooking the city. I opposed her marriage to you from the start, told her you were exactly like every other ambitious man who'd circle her once they learned her last name. She insisted you were different, that you'd chosen her when you thought she was nobody. I did. You chose a fantasy. The translator who made you feel worldly, the woman who believed in your mediocre startup because she had nothing better to do. The moment you had success, you started shopping for an upgrade. Jennifer told me about the comments you made, that she needed to be more social, more supportive of your networking, less focused on her own interests. You were sculpting her into trophy wife material before you'd even achieved trophy husband status. Every word was true. Nicholas had said those things, made those suggestions, applied pressure he'd framed as helping her grow. She loved you anyway, Ricardo continued, kept believing you'd remember the man you'd been in Italy, the one who'd promised her integrity, partnership, a life built on choice, not obligation. She waited for that man to come back. He never did. He's trying to now. Ricardo turned from the window. Too late. She's done waiting. The engagement happens in 2 weeks. Senator Bradford's son, Harrison Bradford III. Harvard Law, federal prosecutor, genuine interest in social justice. He sees Jennifer, clearly values her mind, treats her like an equal. Everything you should have been. 2 weeks. The timeline crushed whatever fragile hope Nicholas had been nursing. Does she love him? She respects him, trusts him, believes they can build something stable together. Love will follow. That's not how love works. It's how arranged marriages work, Ricardo said coldly. And this is an arranged marriage, make no mistake. I chose Harrison. Jennifer agreed, because she's done gambling on men who claim to worship her, but can't be bothered to read her notes. Nicholas stood, his legs unsteady. Then congratulations. You're getting what you wanted. Jennifer married to someone appropriate. Someone from the right family, with the right credentials, someone who will treat her like a valuable asset instead of a person. Harrison treats her like a queen. Jennifer doesn't want to be a queen. She wanted to be a partner, an equal, someone's choice, not someone's project. Nicholas moved toward the door, then stopped. You asked why I remember some of her notes, I'll tell you. Ti amo più della luna e tutte le stelle. I love you more than the moon and all the stars. She put that on the refrigerator every Monday for 3 years. I stopped reading it after the first year because I thought it was repetitive. Now I'd trade everything to see it one more time. Ricardo's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. She used to play piano on Sunday mornings, Nicola continued. Chopin mostly. She'd play the same piece over and over, Nocturne in E-flat major. I thought she was practicing. Hector, my construction foreman, his daughter is a pianist. She told me that piece is about longing and loss. Jennifer wasn't practicing. She was mourning our marriage while I was reading stock reports in the next room. If you understood this, why didn't you change? Because I didn't understand it. Then I was too busy being successful to notice I was failing at everything that mattered. Nicholas pulled the door open. I'm not taking your money, I'm not leaving the city, but I'm also not fighting for Jennifer anymore. If she wants to marry Harrison Bradford, I hope he reads her notes. I hope he listens to her piano playing. I hope he sees her the way I should have from the start. He left Ricardo's office without looking back, took the elevator down 43 floors, walked out into afternoon sunlight that felt too bright for the darkness he was carrying. His phone, a cheap prepaid model he'd bought at a convenience store, buzzed with a text from Hector. Boss needs you back on site. Concrete delivery came early. Nicholas returned to work because work was the only thing that made sense anymore. Physical labor with clear objectives and measurable outcomes. Haul the lumber. Pour the concrete. Build something that would stand. That evening at the soup kitchen, Maria took one look at his face and poured him coffee without asking, "Bad day?" "She's getting married. 2 weeks." Maria absorbed this with her characteristic pragmatism. You knew that was coming. What did you think was going to happen? She'd wait forever. No, I just hoped I'd have more time to become someone who deserved a second chance. Time's not the issue, boy. You're still thinking about deserving her. That's your problem. You can't earn people. You can only be worth choosing, and you can't be worth choosing if you're still performing worthiness for an audience of one. Nicholas stared into his coffee. I don't understand. You're working construction, volunteering here, going to therapy, all of it trying to prove something to her father, to yourself, but it's still performance, still strategic, still manipulation with humbler packaging. It's not manipulation. I'm genuinely trying to change. Why? What changes if she never sees it? Never knows? Never cares? If all this growth is still oriented toward winning her back, even in theory, then you haven't actually changed. You've just rebranded. The words landed hard. Nicholas realized with uncomfortable clarity that Maria was right. Everything he'd done for 8 months, the construction work, the therapy, the volunteering, had been secretly aimed at Jennifer, proof of transformation, evidence of growth, a case for redemption. He'd been building a better trap, not becoming a better person. What do I do instead? Maria refilled his coffee. Figure out who you want to be when nobody's watching, when there's no reward, no applause, no second chance, just you and your choices. That's when real change happens, when you stop performing it and start living it. Nicholas left the soup kitchen that night and walked to the waterfront where he'd met the veteran 8 months ago. The bench was empty now. The water reflected broken city lights like it always had. He thought about Jennifer marrying Harrison Bradford in 2 weeks. Thought about sticky notes he'd thrown away. Thought about piano music he'd ignored. Thought about 8 years of taking her for granted, followed by 8 months of performing repentance. Then he stopped thinking about her entirely. Started thinking about the onions he'd chop tomorrow at the soup kitchen, the lumber he'd haul at the construction site, the therapy session with Dr. Williams where he'd discuss this conversation, the studio apartment where nobody saw him. The life he was building that Jennifer would never witness. Maria was right. If he only changed to win her back, he hadn't changed at all. For the first time in 8 months, Nicholas wasn't thinking about redemption. He was thinking about becoming someone he could respect when he looked in the mirror. Whether Jennifer ever saw it was no longer the point. Chapter 9. The breaking point. The fire at Harbour House started in the electrical room, but Nicholas ran toward the flames because Jennifer's car was in the parking lot, and some lessons only matter when you're willing to die proving them. The women's shelter occupied an old converted school building on the east side. Nicholas knew this because he'd started volunteering there 2 months ago, not at Harbour House itself, but at the food bank that supplied it. He'd been loading boxes of donated supplies into the delivery truck when the alarm started screaming, "Everyone out!" The shelter director, a woman named Angela, was herding residents toward the exits. "Leave everything! Move!" Nicholas saw the smoke pouring from the basement windows, saw mothers grabbing children, women in various states of escape from violence scrambling towards safety. The building was old, the kind of structure that would burn fast once the fire took hold. Then he saw Angela's face go white. Sophia's son, Diego. He's still in the playroom, second floor. She went back for her phone. Nicholas didn't think thinking would have stopped him. He grabbed a jacket from someone's abandoned pile, soaked it under the exterior faucet, and ran into the building through the side entrance before anyone could stop him. The smoke was thicker inside. Heat radiated from below. The stairwell leading up was clear, but filling fast. Nicholas took the steps 3 at a time, his construction-hardened legs driving him upward through air that burned his lungs. The playroom door was closed. He kicked it open. A boy, maybe 5 years old, sat frozen in the corner, surrounded by scattered toys. Too terrified to move, Nicholas wrapped the wet jacket around him and ran. The stairs were worse now. Flames licked up through gaps in the floor. The wet jacket steamed as he covered the boy's head. His own lungs screamed for air that wasn't there. He stumbled, caught himself on the railing that burned through his palm, kept moving because stopping meant dying. He made it outside as the first fire truck arrived. Paramedics grabbed Diego, checking him over while Sophia collapsed. Sobbing with relief, Nicholas collapsed too, coughing smoke and burnt air. His palm blistered where the railing had seared flesh. "You stupid, brave fool," Angela said, kneeling beside him. Her eyes were streaming. From smoke or tears, he couldn't tell. "That was the most reckless thing I've ever seen." Kid was inside. His voice came out ragged. "Couldn't leave him." The fire department contained the blaze before it consumed the whole structure. But the damage was catastrophic. The basement was destroyed, first floor smoke damage beyond repair. The shelter's operations would be shut down for months while repairs happened. If they could afford repairs, Nicholas sat on the ambulance's back bumper while a paramedic treated his hand. The burn was second degree, would scar. He watched families from the shelter being loaded into emergency housing vans, 43 women and children displaced. Nowhere to go. The city's other shelters were already at capacity. "Mr. Whitmore?" A reporter from the local news had materialized. "Can you tell us what happened?" "Building caught fire. Kid was trapped. I went in." "You're the tech entrepreneur who—" "I'm nobody. Focus on them." He nodded toward the families. "They need housing. They need help. That's your story." The reporter started to argue, but her cameraman nudged her, pointing. A black Tesla had pulled up. Jennifer stepped out wearing a business suit, her phone already pressed to her ear. She spotted Angela and headed straight for her, not seeing Nicholas in the ambulance's shadow. "How many displaced?" Jennifer's voice carried. 43. I need emergency housing solutions for 43 people immediately. Call the Grandview. Clear their extended stay wing. Send the bill to Castellano Ventures. Get them transportation now." She was managing the crisis with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Her phone rang again. "Yes, this is Jennifer Castellano. I need approval for emergency shelter reconstruction funding from the Catalina Foundation, full renovation, upgraded safety systems, immediate mobilization." "I don't care about the budget line. This is exactly what the foundation exists for." Nicholas watched her command the chaos into order. This was Jennifer without pretense. The woman who'd hidden her power during their marriage, now wielding it without apology. She was magnificent. Angela said something about electrical codes and building permits. Jennifer made another call. "Vincent, I need the city inspector's office to fast-track harbor house permits. I don't care what it costs. These families cannot wait on bureaucracy." Then her eyes swept the scene and landed on him. The recognition was instant. So was the flash of concern before her expression. locked down into neutrality. She walked over, each step deliberate, stopped 3 feet away, close enough to assess his injuries, far enough to maintain distance. You went inside. Kid was trapped. Your hand. I'll survive. She stared at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her eyes, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement of something she hadn't expected to see. That was reckless. It was necessary. You could have died. Wouldn't have mattered much. Her jaw tightened. Don't say that. Why? My life isn't exactly valuable. His is. Easy math. That's not... She stopped, recalculating. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. You volunteer here. At the food bank, 2 afternoons weekly. Didn't know you'd be here. I'm on the board. Have been for 6 years. She glanced at his bandaged hand. Angela mentioned a volunteer who never gave his full name, never asked for recognition, just showed up and worked. I didn't realize it was you. Wasn't trying to impress anyone, needed to do something useful. The paramedic finished wrapping Nicholas's hand. Jennifer watched without speaking until the ambulance drove away, leaving them standing in smoke-tainted air while firefighters doused the last embers. You've changed, she said finally. I'm trying to. I heard about the construction work, the therapy, the soup kitchen. My father told me about the money you refused. It wouldn't have fixed anything. Most people would have taken it. I'm not most people. Or maybe I am, and that's the point. I was special once, or thought I was. Turns out being ordinary and decent is harder than being extraordinary and cruel. Jennifer's phone rang again. She ignored it. I'm getting married in 11 days. I know. I hope he reads your notes. She looked startled. My notes? The sticky ones you used to leave in Italian. I threw them away without reading most of them. Took them for granted like I took everything about you for granted. I hope Harrison doesn't. He doesn't even know about the notes. Then tell him, show him who you are, all of it. Don't hide yourself like you did with me. You deserve someone who sees you clearly. Her phone rang again. This time she answered, walking a few steps away for the conversation. Nicholas used the moment to leave, heading toward the bus stop because his car had been repossessed months ago. Wait. Jennifer's voice stopped him. She'd ended the call and was standing in the smoke-hazed parking lot, backlit by emergency lights. Diego's mother, Sophia, she wants to thank you. Will you stay? She doesn't need to thank me. Stay anyway. So he stayed. Sophia approached with Diego clinging to her leg, the boy's face still smudged with soot. She was crying again, words tumbling out in Spanish too fast for Nicholas to follow. Jennifer translated quietly. She says you saved her son's life. She says God sent you. She says she'll pray for you every day for the rest of her life. Nicholas knelt down to Diego's level. You were very brave in there, buddy, way braver than me. The boy studied him with solemn 5-year-old eyes. Then he hugged Nicholas with the fierce desperation of someone who understands rescue. Nicholas hugged him back, his burnt hand throbbing, his smoke-damaged lungs aching, his heart breaking open in ways he didn't know it could. When Sophia and Diego left with the emergency housing transport, Jennifer was still standing there. The crisis had been managed. The families were housed. The shelter reconstruction was funded and approved, but she hadn't left. I don't understand you anymore, she said. That's fair. I don't understand me either most days. The man I married would never have run into a burning building. The man you married was a coward who only took risks that benefited himself. This version is trying to figure out what bravery looks like when nobody's watching. I'm watching. That wasn't the point of it. Her phone rang for the 15th time. This time she declined the call, turned it off completely. That shocked Nicholas more than anything. Jennifer ignoring her responsibilities was unthinkable. Come with me, she said. Jennifer, please, just come with me. She led him to her Tesla. He climbed in, feeling absurd in his smoke-stained clothes and bandaged hand. She drove in silence through the city, past the construction site where he worked, past the soup kitchen where he volunteered, past the library where he'd learned who she really was. She stopped at a cemetery on the west side. Catalina Castellano's grave was marked with simple granite and fresh flowers. "I come here when I need clarity," Jennifer said, standing before her mother's headstone. "When I'm trying to make impossible decisions, when I need to remember who I am." "Why are we here?" "Because you saved a child's life today. Because you've spent 8 months becoming someone I don't recognize. Because I'm supposed to marry Harrison in 11 days and I can't stop thinking about a man who used to throw away my love notes." "Don't do this, Jennifer. Don't let me complicate what you've built. Harrison is good for you. Your father said so. He's stable, reliable, from the right world, everything I wasn't. He's boring. He's safe. He's exactly what my father wants." "What do you want?" She turned to face him fully. In the cemetery's fading light, she looked younger, more like the girl on the Vespa, less like the executive commanding rescue operations. "I wanted you to fight for me, to prove you'd changed, to show up and refuse to let me marry someone else. I wanted the grand gesture, the movie moment, the proof that I mattered enough for you to battle through hell to win me back. I can't do that. It wouldn't be real. It would just be me manipulating you with different tactics." "Then, what can you do?" Nicholas looked at her mother's grave, at the woman who died too young, at the loss that had shaped Jennifer into someone who hid her power to test if she'd be loved without it. "I can tell you the truth. I became a better person this year, but I did it for the wrong reasons. I did it to win you back, to prove I'd changed, to earn a second chance. It was still manipulation, just humbler packaging. Maria at the soup kitchen called me on it. She was right. So you haven't changed." "I've changed. But the change doesn't matter if it's still aimed at you. Real change happens when there's no audience, no reward, no applause. When you become better, because being better is its own point. I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be. But I'm trying." Jennifer wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You ran into a burning building today. That wasn't for you. That was for a terrified kid who needed someone. I know. That's what terrifies me." "Why?" She laughed, but it came out broken. "Because for 8 years I waited for you to become the man you were pretending to be. I waited for you to see me clearly, fight for us, choose me over your ego. You never did. Now you're becoming that man, when I've finally stopped waiting, when I've moved on, when I've built a life that doesn't include you. Then keep that life. Marry Harrison. Be happy. You've earned it." "What if I can't?" Her voice cracked. "What if I look at you covered in soot and burns, saving children for no other reason than they need saving, and realize I never stopped loving the person you could have been? Then love the memory, let me go. I destroyed us, Jennifer. I don't get to resurrect what I killed. What if I want to try? Then wait. Not for me. For yourself. Don't marry Harrison to prove you've moved on. Don't marry him because your father chose him. Don't marry him because it's safe. Marry him because you love him, or don't marry him at all. And us? There is no us. There's you, being extraordinary, and there's me, trying to become someone ordinary and decent. Maybe those paths cross again someday. Maybe they don't. Either way, you deserve more than a man who only figured out your worth after losing you." He started to walk away. She called after him. "Where are you going?" "Bus stop, then home. Then tomorrow I'll pour concrete and chop onions and go to therapy and try to be better than I was yesterday, same as always." "Let me drive you." "No. You need to go home and think about what you really want, without me confusing things, without guilt or history or what-ifs, just you and the future you're trying to build." This time when he walked away, she didn't stop him. Nicholas caught the bus 3 blocks away, his burnt hand throbbing, his lungs still raw from smoke, his heart uncertain whether it was breaking or healing. He didn't look back to see if she was still standing by her mother's grave. Looking back would have meant he was still performing for her approval, and that version of Nicholas needed to stay dead. Chapter 10. The Queen's Choice. The wedding was supposed to start in 40 minutes, but Jennifer stood in the bridal suite writing a letter to a man who taught her that real love means letting go, and Harrison deserved better than a bride whose heart lived somewhere else. Her wedding dress cost $30,000. Vera Wang, custom-fitted, exactly what her father had envisioned for this moment. The engagement ring Harrison had given her, 3 carats, flawless clarity, caught morning light streaming through the suite's windows. 200 guests waited downstairs in the Grandview Hotel's grand ballroom, the same room where Nicholas had destroyed their marriage a year ago. "You look stunning." Her father stood in the doorway, distinguished in his tuxedo, pride and something heavier warring in his expression. "Harrison is a fortunate man." "Papa, we need to talk." "The ceremony starts in 37 minutes. "I know." She set down her pen. The letter remained unfinished. "I can't marry him." Ricardo went very still. "Explain." "I respect Harrison. I admire him. I could probably build a decent life with him, but I don't love him the way a wife should love her husband, and he deserves someone who does." "This is about Whitmore, not a question. This is about me, about choosing honestly instead of strategically, about not making the same mistake twice, marrying someone for the wrong reasons." She met her father's eyes. "You married Mama because you loved her, despite the business complications, the family objections, the risk. You chose love. I chose it once with Nicholas, and it destroyed me, but choosing safety with Harrison would destroy me differently. Nicholas hasn't contacted you in months. He refused my money, refused to fight for you, walked away. What future do you imagine?" "None. I'm not choosing Nicholas. I'm choosing not to marry Harrison. Those are different things." Ricardo studied her the way he studied merger contracts, searching for loopholes, hidden clauses, strategic weaknesses. "Your mother would be proud of this decision. I'm terrified by it." "Why?" "Because you're strong enough to walk away from security. That kind of strength either builds empires or destroys them. I don't know which you're choosing." "Neither do I. But I know marrying Harrison when my heart isn't fully his would be cruelty. He deserves better." Her father nodded slowly. "I'll inform the guests. You tell Harrison." Harrison took the news with the grace of a man who'd suspected this outcome. They sat in the empty bride's room while 200 guests received modified announcements downstairs. "It's him, isn't it?" Harrison's voice held resignation. "Not anger. It's me. I'm not ready. Maybe not for you. Maybe not for anyone. But definitely not today. I wanted to be enough. I tried to be what you needed. You were everything right. That's not the same as everything I need." She touched his hand gently. "You deserve someone whose heart races when you enter a room. Someone who chooses you wildly, not wisely. I'm sorry, I couldn't be her." "Do you love him still?" Jennifer considered the question honestly. "I love who he's becoming. I love that he saved a child from a fire without thinking about recognition. I love that he volunteers at places I support without knowing I'd see. I love that he turned down my father's money. But loving someone doesn't mean choosing them. Sometimes it means letting them grow without you." Harrison left to face the guests he'd need to explain this to. Jennifer sat alone in her wedding dress, feeling lighter despite the collapse of plans. Her phone buzzed. A text from Angela at Harbour House. "Construction finished ahead of schedule. Ribbon cutting tomorrow, 2 p.m. if you're available. Your volunteer friend Nicholas will be there. He coordinated the construction crew's donated labor." Jennifer stared at the message. Nicholas had spent months organizing his construction crew to rebuild Harbour House in their off-hours unpaid. Unacknowledged. Simply because it needed doing. She changed out of her wedding dress into regular clothes, left the grand view through the service entrance, avoiding guests and questions, drove across the city to the east side where Harbour House stood newly rebuilt, workers putting finishing touches on landscaping. Nicholas was there directing the crew, his burned hand still bandaged but functional. He wore construction clothes, his face lined with exhaustion and purpose. He hadn't shaved, looked older than his years. Beautiful in his ordinary determination, she watched from her car for 20 minutes, watched him laugh with Hector, watched him help haul a last load of supplies, watched him pause to take a photo of the finished building, probably for the completion records. Then he saw her, stopped mid-motion. The crew kept working around him, but his focus narrowed to Jennifer sitting in her Tesla, watching his world instead of commanding her own. He walked over slowly, stopping a respectful distance from the car. She rolled down the window. "You're supposed to be getting married," he said. "I was. I'm not. I called it off." His expression flickered. Hope, fear, confusion cycling through too fast to name. "Why?" "Because Harrison deserved someone who loved him wildly. I only respected him safely. That's not enough foundation for forever." "So what now?" Jennifer climbed out of the car, stood facing him in the parking lot of a women's shelter he'd helped rebuild without expecting recognition. "Now I figure out who Jennifer Castellano is when she stops hiding behind strategic choices, when she stops testing men to see if they'll love her without her power, when she stops waiting for someone to become what they should have been and starts building what she actually wants." That sounds lonely. Probably. But honest lonely is better than safe lonely. Nicholas nodded. "For what it's worth, I think Harrison's loss is nobody's gain. You choosing yourself, that's not something anyone else gets to claim. You're not going to fight for me?" "No." The answer hurt, despite expecting it. "Why not?" "Because fighting for you would be about me, my redemption, my second chance, my need to prove I've changed. That's still manipulation. You deserve someone who chooses you without needing to prove anything. What if I want you to want me? I've wanted you every day for a year, wanted you so badly I could barely breathe through it. But wanting you isn't the same as being worthy of you. I destroyed the most precious thing in my life because I couldn't see its value until it was gone. That's not love. That's learning. And I'm still learning." Jennifer felt tears threatening. "So we just walk away after everything? We heal, separately. You build the life you deserve without testing whether men will love you without your name. I build the person I should have been without performing redemption for your approval. Maybe those paths cross again. Maybe they don't." "That's heartbreaking." "Yeah." His smile was sad and genuine. "But it's honest, and we never had that before." The construction crew was loading equipment into trucks. Hector called out, asking about tomorrow's worksite. Normal life continuing despite emotional earthquakes. "The ribbon cutting tomorrow," Jennifer said. "Will you be there?" "Probably not. Angela should have that moment. The residents should have that moment. I'll be at another job site pouring foundation. That's my normal now." She wanted to argue, wanted to demand he fight harder, prove more, give her the movie moment where declarations of love fixed everything. But he was right. That would just be another performance. "Thank you," she said finally, "for rebuilding this place, for saving Diego, for becoming someone real instead of someone impressive. Thank you for letting me go, for not making redemption easy, for teaching me that love isn't ownership." He walked back toward the construction site. Jennifer climbed into her Tesla and sat there while workers finished loading equipment she'd cancelled a wedding. Refused a safe future. Stood in a parking lot watching a man who'd destroyed her become someone she could respect if not reclaim. Her phone buzzed. Her father. "Come home when you're ready. No judgments. Just family." 6 months later, Jennifer was keynoting a women's tech leadership conference when she saw Nicholas in the audience, Not front row, where he'd be noticed, but middle section, taking notes on actual paper like someone genuinely interested in content. She stumbled slightly in her speech, recovered, finished strong to standing applause. During the networking session, he didn't approach, just stood by the exit talking with other attendees about the session's topics. She found him as people were leaving. You came. Your speech on ethical AI was important. Wanted to hear it. You could have watched online. Some things deserve showing up for. They stood in the conference center's lobby while people flowed around them, a year and a half since the burning building. A year since her cancelled wedding. 6 months since she'd last seen him. I started a company, he said, security software for domestic violence shelters, free for non-profits. We launched last month. It's small. Probably always will be. But it matters. That's beautiful work. It's honest work. Turns out I'm better at honest than impressive. How's therapy? Hard, good, ongoing. Dr. Williams says I've graduated from self-hatred to self-improvement progress. Jennifer laughed. Real laughter that felt like sunshine after rain. Coffee? I don't think that's wise. Why not? Because I still love you. Because coffee would be me hoping for more. Because you deserve someone who shows up not hoping anything. What if I want more? Nicholas smiled. The smile from the Vespa, from the Italian village, from before everything broke. Then ask me again in 6 months. If we're supposed to rebuild what we destroyed, it won't disappear because we waited. He left. Jennifer stood watching him go, feeling simultaneously devastated and hopeful. 6 months later, she asked him to coffee. He said yes. They talked for 4 hours about everything except their past. When they left, he didn't ask for her number. She didn't offer it. 3 months after that, they ran into each other at Harbour House's fundraiser, danced once, laughed twice, said goodbye at the end without promises. 2 years after the burning building, Nicholas proposed in that Italian village where they'd first fallen. No ring, no planning, just truth. I love you without needing you. I choose you without requiring you. I want to build something real with you. Not marriage as redemption or second chances as validation. Just us. Honest. Equal. Choosing each other because we're finally worth choosing. Jennifer said yes. They married quietly with 30 people. Family, close friends, the construction crew, Harbour House residents, Dr. Williams. Ricardo walked her down the aisle wearing her mother's favorite smile. The wedding bands were simple gold. No diamonds, no extravagance, just commitment. Their vows were brief. I see you clearly. I choose you freely. I love you honestly. When they kissed, it tasted like redemption earned and futures chosen. Not because love conquered everything, but because two people learned that real love starts where performance ends. In the front row, Hector wiped tears, whispering to Maria, "Took them long enough." Maria smiled. Good things require patience. Great things require transformation. And Jennifer whispered against Nicola's lips, "Ti amo più della luna e tutte le stelle." And Jennifer whispered against Nicholas's lips, "Ti amo più della luna e tutte le stelle." This time he whispered back, "And I finally know what that means. Thank you for teaching me." The real started now. Not with 10 Rolls-Royces or revenge or power plays, but with two people who destroyed each other, learning to build something worth keeping. Sometimes empires fall, so humans can rise. Sometimes queens choose love after learning they don't need saving. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning back what you lost, but becoming someone who deserves what they're given. The end.